He had money, power, lawyers who made problems disappear. So when she told him she was pregnant, he vanished overnight. No goodbye, just silence and threats. 18 years later, in a room full of billionaires, a young woman stepped onto a stage. And in one glance, he realized the mistake he buried was about to expose him. But the real question is, will blood save him or destroy everything he built? Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please click on subscribe, like, share, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, back to the story. She found out on a Tuesday morning, not during some dramatic moment, not with music swelling in the background, just a quiet bathroom, flickering light, a cheap plastic test balanced on the edge of the sink. 2 lines, clear, unforgiving. For a long second, she didn't breathe. Her hand tightened around the sink, as if the floor might give way beneath her feet. Her reflection stared back at her, young, tired, hopeful in a way that hadn't yet learned to be afraid. Pregnant. Her first instinct wasn't panic. It was wonder. She pressed her palm against her stomach, still flat, still unchanged, and whispered his name like a prayer. This was supposed to be impossible. They had plans, timelines, promises spoken late at night when a world felt small and safe. He loved her. He had said it like it was a fact, like gravity, like truth. She imagined his face when she told him. The shock first, then the smile he always tried to hide when he was overwhelmed. She imagined him pulling her close, whispering that everything would be okay, that they'd figure out together. Together. She didn't know yet that together was already gone. That night, she waited. She cooked his favorite meal, even though money was tight. Set the table carefully, like presentation could somehow anchor reality. She rehearsed the words again and again, each version softer, braver, more careful than the last. But the door never opened. By midnight, her phone was still silent. By morning, his side of the bed was empty. Not slept in, not rumpled. Empty in a way that made her chest ache. She checked her messages. Nothing. She called. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. The third time, the call didn't ring at all. Disconnected. Her hands began to shake. She rushed to his apartment. The door was locked. The name gone from the mailbox. The neighbors shrugged. Movers had come early. Very early. No forwarding address. It was as if he had evaporated. By noon, panic had replaced confusion. By evening, panic had turned into something darker. Fear. Because men don't vanish like that unless they're running from something. Or unless someone made them vanish. 3 days later, the knock came. Sharp. Precise. Unkind. 2 men stood in the hallway, both wearing suits that cost more than everything she owned combined. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. Their voices were calm in the way predators stay calm. They knew her name. They knew where she lived. They knew she was pregnant. That was when her knees nearly gave out. We represent a family with significant influence, one of them said, as if influence were a neutral word. You've been involved with someone who has obligations beyond personal entanglements. She didn't understand at first. Not fully. Her mind clung to denial like a lifeline. Where is he? She asked. Is he okay? The men exchanged a glance that said everything. He will not be contacting you again. Her mouth went dry. He wouldn't just leave, she said. You don't know him. Oh, the other lawyer replied smoothly. We know him very well. Then they laid it out. Clinical, efficient, brutal. The relationship was over. The pregnancy was inconvenient. Any attempt to pursue contact would be interpreted as harassment. If she spoke publicly, they would respond. If she sought legal action, they would respond. If she told anyone with influence, they would respond. And their response would be devastating. They listed the things she stood to lose as casually as reading a grocery receipt. Her job, her education, her housing, her family's medical support. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't threaten her directly. They didn't need to. Power doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It simply states consequences. One of them leaned in slightly, lowering his voice just enough to sound almost kind. You're young, he said. You still have a chance at a life. Don't destroy it by clinging to a fantasy. A fantasy. That was what they called love. That was what they called the child growing inside her. When they left, the hallway felt smaller. The air felt thinner. She locked the door and slid down against it, sobbing so hard she thought she might break in half. That night, she understood something with terrifying clarity. She wasn't fighting a man anymore. She was fighting a system, a machine built to protect wealth, reputation, and bloodlines at any cost. And she was alone. No press would touch her. No lawyer would take her case. No institution would stand between her and annihilation. She tried anyway. She called them from borrowed phones. She emailed addresses that bounced back. She wrote letters she never sent. Silence answered every attempt. Not even rejection. Erasure. Weeks passed. Her body changed while her world collapsed. Morning sickness on crowded buses. Bills stacked on the table like accusations. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how something so small could carry so much weight. She learned how to move quietly, how to disappear without being seen disappearing. She withdrew from places where questions were asked. She stopped sharing details. She stopped trusting smiles that came too easily. Fear became her shadow. She felt watched, even when no one was there. Every unknown number made her heart race. Every unfamiliar face felt like a threat. And yet, the baby grew, kicked, lived. That was when rage finally surfaced. Hot, focused, controlled. Not the kind that screams. The kind that survives. They wanted her silent, invisible, ashamed. She refused one thing. She would not let her child be born into fear. So she made a choice. Not revenge. Not justice. Survival. She changed cities. Changed routines. Changed the way she carried herself in the world. She learned to stretch money until it screamed. Learned to endure exhaustion like it was a second language. Learned that dignity didn't come from winning. It came from standing when everything tried to push you down. There were nights she cried herself to sleep. Nights she hated him with a force that scared her. And nights she hated herself for ever believing love could protect her from power. But every morning she got up. Because she had to. Because someone was depending on her. Years later, people would ask how she did it. How she raised a child alone. How she survived when she was erased. She would never tell them the whole truth. Because the truth was simple and brutal. She didn't win. She endured. And somewhere far away, the man who left her went on with his life. Untouched, celebrated, protected by the very system that had crushed her. He didn't just walk away. He made sure she had nowhere to stand. This wasn't just abandonment. It was power-crushing vulnerability. If you believe no woman should be silenced just because a man has money, hit subscribe. If you stand with the woman who is left with nothing, comment, I stand for justice. Because stories like this don't survive unless someone chooses to listen. The child arrived on a stormy night, quietly. No grand announcements. No proud father pacing the hallway. Just a young woman gripping cold metal rails, biting down on pain she had no one to hand off to. When the nurse placed the baby in her arms, the world shrank to one small, breathing miracle. A girl. Tiny fingers. Soft cries. Eyes that opened as if already studying the room. In that moment, fear took a step back. She had lost almost everything, but not this. The first years were a blur of exhaustion and determination. Days stitched together by routine and survival. Nights broken into fragments of sleep and whispered promises. I've got you, she would murmur into the baby's hair. I won't fail you. And she meant it. She worked wherever someone would pay her. Morning shifts, night shifts, weekend shifts. Jobs that left her feet swollen and her back aching. Jobs where supervisors looked through her like she was part of the furniture. No maternity leave. No emergency savings. No second adult to call when the baby had a fever at 3 a.m. There was no safety net beneath her. Only hard ground and sheer will. She learned how to calculate risk the way generals do. If she bought formula, rent would be tight. If she paid rent early, groceries would be thin. If she got sick, everything would unravel. So she didn't get sick. She learned to move through the world invisible. She didn't ask for help unless it was absolutely necessary. Didn't complain. Didn't explain. She learned the dangerous truth early. Vulnerability attracts predators. Her daughter grew up watching all of it. Watching her mother come home exhausted but upright. Watching her hands count change late at night. Watching her wipe tears before opening the door so her child would never see them. Some children are taught with words. This child was taught with example. By age 4, she understood that strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered, "Get up again." By age 6, she could sense tension in a room. By age 8, she could read people faster than most adults. And by age 10, she asked questions that made teachers pause. Why do some neighborhoods never get bank loans? Why do small businesses fail even when they're good? Why do smart people stay poor? Her teachers called her gifted. Her mother called her observant. They both knew she was different. School became her refuge. Not because it was easy, but because it made sense. Effort produced results. Questions led to answers. Merit mattered. She excelled. Top grades, scholarships, academic awards. While other kids dreamed of toys and trips, she dreamed of systems. How money moved. Who decided value. Why some doors were locked before people ever reached them. At home, she watched her mother juggle invoices, schedules, receipts. Watched her negotiate hours, argue with landlords, manage chaos with grace. That was her first business education. By 12, she was helping neighbors with homework for free. By 14, she was tutoring for pay. By 16, she was building spreadsheets and tracking earnings, reinvesting every dollar. Her mother noticed but never interfered. She understood something important. Control is what power uses. Support is what love uses. So she stood back and stood ready. The girl's first business idea wasn't glamorous. It was practical. She noticed that students from backgrounds like hers struggled, not because they weren't intelligent, but because no one taught them how to translate their ideas into systems adults respected. So she taught them how to write proposals, how to budget, how to speak confidently to authority. Word spread. One client became 5. 5 became 20. By the time she was 18, she had something most adults never managed to build. A real company. Not inherited. Not funded by connections. Built from late nights and lived experience. Her mother watched from the sidelines with a mix of pride and quiet terror. Because success attracts attention, and attention has consequences. Still, she never discouraged her daughter, because fear had already stolen enough from them. Then came the email. 2:47 a.m., the kind of hour when nothing good usually happens. The mother was awake, as she often was, listening to the sounds of the city outside their small apartment. Her daughter slept a few feet away, curled into herself like the world was still safe. The phone vibrated softly. She almost ignored it. Almost. The subject line made her sit up straight. Invitation to present Pinnacle Investor Gala. She read it once, then again, then a third time, just to be sure her exhaustion wasn't playing tricks on her. Her daughter, selected from hundreds. An elite investor gala. 15-minute presentation. Black tie event. Hosted by one of the most powerful corporations in the region. She scrolled down, and there it was. The company name. Her stomach dropped. 18 years collapsed into a single instant. That name hadn't lost its power. She whispered it out loud once, like testing a wound. The same company, the same empire, the same man who had vanished. Her first instinct was to protect, to delete the email, to pretend it never came, to keep her daughter safe in the world they had carved out alone. But then she looked at the girl sleeping beside her, the girl who had earned every inch of her brilliance. And she knew running had been necessary once. Now it would be a betrayal. Morning came too quickly. She watched her daughter read the email, eyes widening, then narrowing with focus. "This is big," the girl whispered. "Mom, this is huge." The excitement in her voice made something ache in the mother's chest. "Yes," she said, "it is." They didn't speak the name. They didn't connect the dots. Not yet, but the audience could. A powerful man, a brilliant young woman. One stage. The collision was already in motion. Across the city, preparations were being made. Invitations sent. Speakers scheduled. Investors eager for the next big thing. No one yet realized they were setting the stage, not just for opportunity, but for reckoning. And in a small apartment, a mother and daughter planned outfits they could barely afford, practicing speeches and imagining a future that felt dangerously close. The mother lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. 18 years of silence. 18 years of survival. And now, a door she never meant to open again was slowly, inevitably swinging wide. If you believe single mothers are superheroes, tap like. Comment, respect mothers, if you know who really raised this future leader. Because success never starts on the stage. It starts in the shadows. The ballroom was flawless. That was the problem. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks from a ceiling, scattering light across polished marble floors. Tables were dressed in white, so clean they felt surgical. Every detail screamed control. Money curated into beauty, power wrapped in elegance. This was a room where mistakes didn't happen, where men like him ruled. The CEO stood near the front, glass of champagne untouched in his hand, surrounded by people who laughed too easily and spoke in numbers too large to feel real. He had built this world brick by brick, deals, mergers, sacrifices made quietly and justified loudly. Tonight was supposed to be another victory lap, another evening where his name meant certainty. Then the lights dimmed. Applause rippled through the room as the host introduced the next presenter, a rising young entrepreneur redefining the future. The CEO barely listened at first. He'd seen hundreds of pitches, brilliant minds, polished slides, rehearsed confidence. Nothing surprised him anymore, until she stepped onto the stage. Something inside him shifted. Not a thought, a reaction. The air left his lungs as if someone had struck him. She stood tall under the spotlight, calm, composed, unmistakably out of place, and completely in control. Too young for this room, too real. And then he saw it, the tilt of her head, the way she scanned the audience before speaking, the shape of her hands as she gestured, precise, economical, familiar, uncomfortably familiar. His heartbeat stuttered. She began to speak. Her voice was steady, clear, confident without arrogance. She spoke about markets that ignored people like her, about intelligence wasted because access was denied, about systems that rewarded privilege while punishing survival. Each sentence landed like a hammer, not because it was revolutionary, but because he had heard it before, years ago, in another life, from another mouth. The resemblance sharpened. Her eyes dark, focused, relentless. Her cadence measured, thoughtful. Even the pauses felt like echoes. His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered softly on the marble floor. No one noticed. He was doing math in his head now. Dangerous math. Dates. Timelines. A memory he had buried so deep it had almost stopped hurting. He remembered the woman he left behind. The one whose name he had trained himself not to think. The one whose life he had erased to protect his own. The numbers lined up. Perfectly. His chest tightened. No, not possible. He leaned forward as if proximity could change reality. The audience was transfixed now. Investors scribbled notes. Cameras adjusted angles. Social feeds lit up with quiet excitement. But the CEO was unraveling. His empire, the boardrooms, the accolades, the influence, collapsed inward under the weight of a single realization. That wasn't just a brilliant young woman on stage. That was his daughter. The truth didn't arrive gently. It detonated. He saw it in the curve of her smile when she dismantled a question, in the fire behind her composure, in the unapologetic intelligence that mirrored his own. 18 years of absence screamed between them. And then she said it. I grew up watching my mother work multiple jobs, she told the room. I learned strategy before I learned comfort. I learned resilience before privilege. The word mother hit him like a blow. The audience murmured approvingly. He couldn't breathe. Every success he'd ever claimed felt counterfeit in that moment. Every justification rotted. He had been protected. She had survived. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood. They always did for greatness. But the CEO remained frozen. Someone clapped him on the shoulder. Another leaned in, praising his eye for talent. He didn't hear them. He was staring at the stage as she stepped down, disappearing into a cluster of investors eager to claim her future. And then it happened. Someone asked a question too loudly. Someone mentioned her birthday. Someone joked about her age. The final piece clicked into place. He turned pale. The truth had nowhere left to hide. He moved, not with grace, not with strategy, with desperation. Cameras caught him pushing through the crowd. This titan of industry, suddenly reckless, human, exposed. People whispered. Phones came up. The room leaned forward. He reached her just as she laughed politely at an investor's comment. She looked up. Their eyes met. For a fraction of a second, the world held its breath. She frowned, confused by his intensity. He spoke her name. The room went quiet. Not whispered, not private, public. Every head turned, every camera locked in. I need to ask you something, he said, voice shaking. How old are you? Confusion rippled across her face. I'm 18, she replied. Why? Silence detonated. Her mother, standing at the edge of the room, froze. The CEO swallowed hard. The words came out broken. I'm your father. Gasps tore through the ballroom. A collective intake of breath. Shock gave way to chaos. She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. What? She whispered. Cameras surged forward. Whispers turned into roars. The elite world he controlled now feasted on his collapse. Her mother stepped forward, face pale but spine straight. Stop, she said, but it was too late. The truth had escaped its cage. 18 years of silence exploded in front of power players who had never imagined themselves witnesses to consequence. The CEO stood there, exposed, stripped of narrative, unable to hide behind lawyers or influence. His success didn't matter anymore, because in this room, for the first time, money couldn't protect him. If you believe powerful men should be held accountable, comment, no more lies. Share this story if you're done watching money protect bad behavior, because silence only protects the guilty. The room never fully recovered from the silence. After the truth spilled into the open, after gasps turned to whispers and whispers turned to headlines, the gala lost its shine. Crystal still glittered. Cameras still rolled. But the illusion, control, invincibility, certainty was gone. People looked at the show differently now. Not with admiration, with curiosity, with judgment, with hunger. The kind reserved for fallen giants. But he didn't notice them anymore. He was watching her, his daughter. She stood frozen at first, like the world had shifted 1 inch too far to the left. Her mind raced, searching for logic, for explanation, for a way to wake up from this moment. Blood, that was all he had offered. Not presence, not protection, not love, just blood. She looked at her mother, the woman who had been there for every fever, every exam, every failure, every quiet triumph no one else had applauded. Her mother didn't cry. She didn't plead. She didn't rush forward to soften the blow. She simply stood, still, grounded, unmovable. A woman who had survived worse than this. A woman who had already paid the price. That was when the daughter understood something profound. This moment was not about him. It never had been. The CEO opened his mouth, desperation leaking into his voice. I didn't know, he said quickly. I swear, I didn't know. If I had. She raised a hand, not in anger, in control. The room went silent again. You left, she said calmly, and you stayed gone. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't performing pain. She was stating fact. I built my life without you, she continued. I didn't need your money. I didn't need your name. I didn't even know your face. Every word landed with precision. He tried to step closer. Security hesitated, unsure who had authority anymore. She didn't move. Blood doesn't erase absence, she said, and regret doesn't rewrite history. The cameras caught it all. Not a screaming match, not a tearful reunion, something far more devastating. Clarity. The CEO's shoulders sagged. For the first time in decades, he looked small. He had spent his life believing power was leverage, money, silence, control. But none of it mattered here. Character would have, and he didn't have enough of it. He looked at the mother then, really looked, not the scared young woman he had abandoned, but a force shaped by survival. I'm sorry, he said quietly. The word echoed, hollow. She met his gaze. I know, she replied. And that was all. No forgiveness, no reconciliation, no absolution, just truth. The daughter turned away first. That was the verdict. Not shouted, not negotiated. Chosen. She walked back onto the stage, not for him, but for herself. She addressed the room with calm authority. My work speaks for itself, she said. My future doesn't depend on anyone's past. Investors nodded. Partners leaned in. Respect shifted, not toward the man who owned the building, but toward the woman who owned herself. The CEO stood alone as the room moved on without him. Deals continued. Conversations resumed. But his power was gone. Not taken. Rendered irrelevant. Later that night, mother and daughter stood outside beneath the city lights. The air felt lighter. I'm proud of you, the mother said. The daughter smiled. So am I. They walked away together. No applause. No victory lap. Just dignity. Because the real victory wasn't reconciliation. It was self-worth, without permission. If you believe walking away from a bully is strength, subscribe. Comment, she won. If you think success is the best revenge. And if you believe no one gets to rewrite history just because they regret it, share this story. But here's the question no one asks. What happens after the spotlight fades, when the world stops watching and power tries to reclaim control? Because not every reckoning ends on stage. Some begin afterward. Thank you for watching this story to the end. Please click subscribe, like, and share this video. Click on the screen to watch the next one.